Have you ever wondered why your mind refuses to rest even when your body is tired? You turn off the lights, close your eyes, but the thoughts keep coming back louder than ever. Sleepless nights, restless emotions, and endless worries are not just personal struggles. They are shared experiences across the modern world. And this is exactly where Zen stories and Buddhist teachings can meet you tonight. For centuries, monks and teachers have passed down simple but transformative stories that unlock the ability to calm the restless mind. These are not abstract ideas or heavy philosophies. They are timeless lessons told through everyday images: an empty boat drifting on a river, a farmer watching his horse run away, a monk savoring a single strawberry. Each of these stories carries a hidden key to freedom from anger, grief, or anxiety, and each can guide you to a state of deep rest. Here is the truth. You do not need to be a master of meditation. You do not need to escape to a mountain monastery. These stories work right where you are, in your bedroom, on your couch, listening in the quiet of the evening. They are designed to meet you in the middle of your racing thoughts and slowly turn them into calm waters. As you follow along, you will discover 10 Zen parables and a few small practices you can try immediately. You will learn why letting go brings more peace than holding on, why anger burns you before it touches anyone else, and why every fragile moment is more precious when you see that nothing lasts forever. So before we begin, take one deep breath with me. Ask yourself this simple question: which story will stay with me tonight, and how might it change the way I face tomorrow? On the banks of a gentle river where the waters carried the reflection of the evening sky and the sound of birds faded into the distance, there lived a man who found his greatest joy in rowing his small wooden boat. Every day when his work was finished and the sun began to drop low on the horizon, he would push his boat out onto the calm surface of the river. There, surrounded by stillness and light, he could breathe freely and forget the noise of the world. For him, these journeys were not simply moments of leisure, but moments of renewal, as though the rhythm of his oars was in harmony with the rhythm of his heart. One evening, while he was drifting in the golden silence, he noticed a boat in the distance. At first, it was nothing unusual. Boats passed from time to time, and he was used to adjusting his course. But soon he realized that this boat was moving directly toward him. He adjusted slightly to one side, expecting the other boat to shift as well. Yet the boat kept coming straight and fast. Concern began to rise in him. He raised his voice, politely calling out a warning. "Be careful. Watch your course." No answer came. The boat drew nearer, still unchanging. His voice grew louder, tinged now with irritation. "Move aside. You are going to hit me." The river, which a moment ago had been a sanctuary, now became a stage for rising fear and anger. He gripped his oar, ready to push the other vessel away, his heart beating faster. As the boat struck his own, he shouted, ready to unleash the full weight of his frustration. But then he looked more carefully, and what he saw silenced him at once. The boat was empty. No one had been steering it at all. It had been carried only by the current of the river. The collision itself had not changed, but something far more powerful had shifted his perception. The anger that had filled his chest dissolved in an instant, replaced by the recognition of a simple truth: there was never any insult intended. His fury had been a creation of his own mind. What punished him was not the boat itself, but the story he had imagined about another person's carelessness. The Buddha once said, "You are not punished for your anger, you are punished by your anger." The empty boat shows us this teaching with clarity. The pain of the man was not the crash, which caused no great damage, but the storm of emotion that he carried inside himself. He believed someone had ignored him, that someone had disrespected him, and that belief ignited his rage. In truth, no such intention had existed. Now, imagine your own daily life. How often do you encounter empty boats? Perhaps someone cuts you off in traffic, and your first thought is that they are selfish or reckless, when in fact they might be rushing to the hospital. Perhaps a colleague fails to greet you in the morning, and you immediately assume arrogance or dislike, when in truth their mind is consumed with worry for a sick child. Perhaps a friend does not answer your message, and you take it as rejection when they are quietly wrestling with depression. In each of these moments, the boat may be empty, yet the ego fills it with a story, and that story becomes a source of suffering. Zen Buddhism teaches that our anger, frustration, and resentment are often born not from the events themselves, but from the assumptions and judgments we create. The ego insists on being at the center of every story. When something happens, it whispers that it must have been directed at us personally. The man on the river shouted because he believed someone was ignoring him. His ego could not accept the idea that it was not about him at all. The 13th century Zen master Dogen once said, "To study the way of the Buddha is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." When we forget the self, we no longer see every event as a threat or an insult. We can recognize empty boats for what they are: events with no malice, no personal attack, no reason to cling to anger. Modern psychology supports this ancient insight. Researchers have shown that our brains are wired with what is called the negativity bias. This means we are more likely to notice and remember negative events than positive ones, and more likely to assume danger or hostility where none exists. This bias was useful for survival in the past, but in everyday life it becomes a source of constant stress. The empty boat reminds us that we do not need to believe every story the mind creates. So how can we practice seeing empty boats in our own lives? The first step is awareness. Notice the physical sensations that arise when anger begins to grow: the tightening in the chest, the quickening of the breath, the heat in the face. These are signals that the ego is preparing to take control. In that moment, pause. Ask yourself, am I filling an empty boat? Am I assuming intent where none may exist? This pause can create space for a different choice. The second step is compassion. Even if there is someone steering the boat, they too are carried by the currents of their own struggles. The driver who cuts you off may be lost in grief. The colleague who seems distant may be carrying hidden burdens. When we see others not as enemies but as fellow travelers, we loosen the grip of anger. The third step is letting go. The Buddha compared anger to holding a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. In the end, you are the one who is burned. By releasing the coal, by choosing not to accept the gift of anger, you free yourself. This does not mean that you never set boundaries or never act when harm is done. It means you act from clarity rather than from rage. The story of the empty boat can also be applied to the inner world. Sometimes the boat is not another person but our own mind drifting in currents we do not control. A thought arises, collides with us, and we react with anger toward ourselves. We may feel shame, guilt, or self-hatred, imagining that our worth has been attacked. But if we look carefully, we may see that the boat is empty, that the thought has no real substance, that it was simply passing through. By treating our own thoughts as empty boats, we learn not to fight them but to let them drift away. Consider how your days would change if you carried this wisdom. The driver cuts you off, and instead of swearing, you breathe once and let it go. The colleague fails to greet you, and instead of sulking, you smile gently, giving them the benefit of the doubt. The friend does not reply, and instead of drowning in worry, you send a silent wish for their well-being. Each time you choose not to fill the empty boat with stories of insult. Each time you set yourself free. Tonight, as you reflect on your own experiences, recall a moment when you felt slighted or offended. Ask yourself honestly, was the boat empty? Did I create suffering by telling myself a story that was never true? If you can recognize even one such moment, you have taken the first step toward liberation. The river of life will always carry boats toward us. Some will be guided, some will be empty. We cannot control their movement, but we can choose how to respond. We can shout and curse, filling the air with anger, or we can smile, adjust our course, and keep rowing in peace. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that the world will not always bend to our will, but our heart can always bend toward freedom. So the next time you feel anger rising, remember the man on the river. Remember the boat that seemed full of insult but was empty all along. And in that remembrance, let your own anger dissolve into the water, leaving only the quiet sound of your breath and the vast calm of the present moment. In the heart of the mountains, where mist clung to the tops of the trees and silence filled the narrow paths, there lived a monk whose life was dedicated to contemplation and simplicity. He had taken vows of discipline and mindfulness, and each day he walked through the forest with calm steps, observing the beauty of nature, as if each leaf and each stone contained a teaching. His life was quiet, but it was also deeply alive, for he carried with him the practice of being present in every moment. One afternoon, while following a narrow trail along the side of a cliff, the monk suddenly heard a terrible roar. His heart stopped for a moment as the sound echoed through the trees. He turned and saw a tiger emerging from the underbrush. its eyes fixed on him, its muscles tense with raw power. The ground seemed to tremble with each step the animal took. Fear surged through the monk's body, and instinctively he ran, robes flowing behind him as the tiger closed in. The path narrowed sharply until it ended at the edge of a steep cliff. There was nowhere else to go. Below, the monk saw another tiger pacing at the bottom, its gaze equally fierce, waiting for him to fall. Desperate, he spotted a vine hanging over the edge. Without hesitation, he grabbed it and began to climb down, dangling between the tiger above and the tiger below. His arms trembled from the strain and sweat covered his face. He could hear the growl above him and the restless pacing below. He was caught between two dangers, unable to move upward or downward. Fear surrounded him like a cage. Then, in the midst of this life or death struggle, something unexpected caught his attention. Growing out of the cliffside was a small strawberry plant. On it hung a single ripe berry, red and glistening in the sunlight. The monk stopped thinking about the tigers for a moment. Instead, he reached carefully, plucked the strawberry and placed it in his mouth. The sweetness filled his senses. He savored the taste, completely forgetting past and future danger and fear. In that instant, he smiled. The story of the monk and the strawberry has echoed across centuries because it speaks to the condition of every human life. Each of us is suspended between the tigers of the past and the tigers of the future. Above us are the regrets, the mistakes, the wounds we cannot erase. Below us are the fears, the anxieties, the endless what-ifs that haunt us about tomorrow. And in between, dangling and uncertain, we are offered small strawberries of joy in the present moment. Most of the time, we do not notice them, or we dismiss them as too small to matter. Yet it is in tasting them that life becomes bearable, even beautiful. Why do we miss the strawberries? Zen Buddhism teaches that the mind is designed to scan for threats. From an evolutionary perspective, this vigilance kept our ancestors alive. But what protected us long ago now often robs us of peace. The mind runs to the past in order to replay every mistake, as though doing so could undo it. The mind leaps into the future to prepare for every possible outcome, as though worry itself could serve as protection. In both directions, the mind flees the present. Yet the present is the only place where life actually happens. The monk, trapped between two tigers, could have surrendered to fear. He could have clung desperately to the vine until his strength failed. He could have obsessed about the impossibility of escape. Instead, he saw the strawberry and chose to experience it fully. In doing so, he discovered a moment of peace, even in the face of danger. His life did not change outwardly, but inwardly he touched a freedom that cannot be stolen by fear. This parable speaks directly to modern lives. Consider how much of your energy is consumed by yesterday. Perhaps you replay harsh words you regret, or imagine how a conversation could have gone differently. These are the tigers above you. They roar with the voices of shame and guilt, demanding your attention even though nothing can be changed. Then consider the tigers below, the future scenarios that haunt you. Will you lose your job, fail an exam, face illness, be abandoned by someone you love? These fears may or may not ever come to pass, but they can devour your peace today. Between these two sets of tigers, many people spend their lives dangling in fear, never noticing the strawberries that grow right beside them. The strawberry can be anything. It might be the laughter of a child, the taste of tea, the warmth of sunlight on your face, or the comfort of your bed at night. It might be the sound of rain, the presence of a friend, or the breath moving gently in and out of your body. These are not trivial distractions. They are reminders that even in difficulty there are moments of sweetness available. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This teaching is not an abstract idea. It is a practical path. When we train ourselves to taste the strawberry, to notice the small joys of life, we shift our relationship with suffering. The tigers may still be there, but they lose their power to consume us entirely. Practicing this way is not denial. To savor the strawberry is not to pretend the tigers are gone. It is to acknowledge that even with danger and uncertainty, life still offers gifts. This balance between honesty and appreciation is the essence of mindfulness. We neither run away from reality nor drown in fear. We allow ourselves to touch joy without waiting for everything to be safe or perfect. Psychologists today describe a similar idea called savoring. Savoring is the practice of paying attention to positive experiences, prolonging them, and truly absorbing them instead of rushing past. Studies have shown that people who regularly savor simple moments report greater happiness, resilience, and even better health. The monk's strawberry is an ancient metaphor for what science now confirms: the way we attend to small joys can transform our well-being. Think of your own life. What strawberries are growing beside you right now? Perhaps it is the simple fact that you are alive and breathing. Perhaps it is the presence of someone who loves you, or the chance to rest at the end of the day. These are not insignificant. They are the flavor of life itself. Zen practice encourages us to cultivate what the Japanese call ichigo ichi, meaning one time, one meeting. It is the recognition that each moment is unique and will never return. When you eat a meal, that exact taste will never happen again. When you sit with a friend, that exact meeting will never repeat. When you hear the wind in the trees, that sound belongs to this moment only. To live with this awareness is to taste the strawberry fully, not half-heartedly, not distracted, but with gratitude. In your daily routine, it is easy to postpone joy, telling yourself that you will rest later, celebrate later, appreciate later. The strawberry teaches that later may never come. The only time we can truly live is now. The monk did not wait for safety to enjoy the fruit. He reached for it in the midst of uncertainty. Likewise, we can reach for joy, even when life feels unstable. Tonight, reflect on the tigers that surround you. Which regrets keep roaring in your mind? Which fears pace below, waiting to consume your peace? Then ask yourself what strawberry you might taste in this very moment. Is it the rhythm of your breath, the softness of your pillow, the quiet of this room? Allow yourself to experience it without distraction, as if it were the only strawberry in the world. The story of the monk and the strawberry reminds us that life is not about eliminating every danger or solving every problem before we can rest. It is about realizing that even in the presence of struggle, beauty exists. Each moment offers a gift if we are willing to see it. The monk's smile was not foolishness. It was wisdom, the wisdom of someone who understood that peace is found not by defeating the tigers, but by tasting the strawberry that is always within reach. So the next time your mind is caught between what has been and what may come, pause. Look closely. Somewhere near you there is a strawberry waiting. Taste it fully. In that act, you step out of fear and into the only place life is ever lived, the present moment. After the monk savored the sweetness of the strawberry, the teaching leads us further into the heart of suffering itself. In another story, the Buddha sat beneath the trees with his disciples. The forest was quiet, and the gentle sound of birds filled the air. One disciple, troubled by his own pain, stepped forward and bowed. His voice was heavy as he asked, "Master, why do we suffer so much in this life? Pain follows us everywhere. How can we find peace?" The Buddha answered with an image as simple as it was profound. He told the disciple, "Imagine a man struck by an arrow. This arrow causes pain, and that pain cannot be avoided. It is the first arrow." The disciples nodded, understanding that life brings wounds. We cannot escape sickness, aging, accidents, the loss of those we love. These experiences pierce the heart with unavoidable pain. The Buddha continued, "Now imagine that after being struck by the first arrow, the man shoots himself with a second arrow. This second arrow is not physical but mental. It is anger, fear, resentment, and sorrow that follow the pain. This arrow is optional." The disciples were silent, realizing the depth of this truth. The first arrow is life. The second arrow is what we add through the reactions of our mind. This teaching is both simple and revolutionary. We cannot stop the first arrow. No one can avoid illness, disappointment, or death. Yet the second arrow, the suffering caused by our own resistance and judgment, can be released. When we meet pain with aversion, when we insist that life should be different, we multiply our own suffering. Think about a time when you faced disappointment. Perhaps you failed at something important, or someone close to you walked away. The first arrow was the event itself, the loss, the hurt, the shock. But then the mind fired the second arrow. It told you, "This always happens to me." It whispered, "I will never succeed." It repeated, "Life is unfair and I cannot bear it." Each thought pierced deeper than the original wound. The pain was real, but the suffering grew because of the stories attached to it. Zen practice teaches that the second arrow arises from three common habits of mind. The first is aversion, our instinctive recoiling from what is unpleasant. We fight reality, and in fighting we add tension to what already hurts. The second is identification, the way we merge with the experience and believe it defines us. Instead of saying pain is here, we say I am pain, and in that belief we become consumed. The third is proliferation, the endless stream of thoughts that spiral from one moment of hurt into a storm of imagined catastrophes. A simple headache becomes a fear of serious illness. A missed call becomes a story of rejection. Each thought is another arrow striking again and again. The Buddha's teaching offers another way. Through mindfulness, we learn to pause between the first and the second arrow. We notice the pain as it is raw and undeniable, but we choose not to shoot the second arrow. We breathe into the sensation. We acknowledge, this hurts, without adding, this will ruin me. We create space between the event and our reaction. In that space, freedom begins. Consider a modern example. You receive difficult news at work. The project you cared for deeply is rejected. The first arrow strikes sharp and immediate. Sadness and disappointment are natural. But then comes the temptation of the second arrow. I am worthless. My boss hates me. My career is finished. None of these thoughts are true, yet they deepen the wound. If instead you pause and breathe, you may say, I feel disappointed. This is painful, but it is not the end. That simple shift protects you from needless suffering. Another example lies in grief. When someone you love passes away, the first arrow is unavoidable. The absence, the silence, the memories that will never return, these are piercing and real. The second arrow comes when we tell ourselves, I cannot live without them. This pain will never end. Life is cruel to me alone. These thoughts isolate us and intensify our despair. Yet when we see grief as part of the universal human experience, when we recognize that others too have felt this loss, we may still hurt deeply, but we suffer less. We allow compassion for ourselves and for all who share this path. The Buddha summarized it simply: pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. This is not an invitation to deny pain, but to meet it skillfully. When we practice mindfulness, we notice when the second arrow is being drawn. We recognize the urge to lash out, to blame, to wallow in despair. Then we choose differently. We let the arrow fall from our hand. This wisdom can transform relationships. Imagine an argument with a loved one. Harsh words are spoken. The first arrow lands. It stings and it cannot be undone. But what happens next is up to us. If we fire the second arrow, we replay the words endlessly, magnify the insult, and build a wall of resentment. If we resist the second arrow, we acknowledge the hurt but remain open to healing. We respond with patience, perhaps even forgiveness. The wound remains, but the suffering lessens. This teaching also applies inwardly. How often do we shoot arrows at ourselves? A mistake at work becomes proof of our incompetence. A moment of weakness becomes a judgment on our entire character. These self-inflicted arrows can be harsher than any wound caused by others. Mindfulness invites us to meet ourselves with kindness, to say, yes, I made an error, and it hurts. But I do not need to attack myself further. In this way, we become allies to ourselves rather than enemies. To live without the second arrow is not easy. The habits of aversion, identification, and proliferation are deeply ingrained. But with practice, the gap between the first arrow and our reaction grows wider. In that gap, we can breathe, reflect, and choose. Over time, we discover that peace is not the absence of pain, but the absence of unnecessary suffering. The Buddha once said, what you think you become, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you create. When we imagine endless arrows, we create endless wounds. When we imagine space and compassion, we create healing. Each moment offers us a choice to add another arrow or to lay the bow aside. Tonight, as you rest, recall the arrows you have carried. Which pains were unavoidable, and which were created by your own mind? Can you distinguish between the first and the second? Can you forgive yourself for the arrows you have fired and choose to release them? The path is not about perfection. It is about awareness, about learning slowly to let go of what does not serve us. The story of the two arrows reminds us that life will always contain hardship. No one escapes the first arrow, but we have immense power over the second. By refusing to wound ourselves further, by choosing presence and compassion, we open the door to freedom. The tigers of the past and the future may still roar, but with mindfulness we can rest in the sweetness of the moment and face life with steady hearts. Among the many stories passed down from the time of the Buddha, few carry as much compassion and universality as the tale of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seed. It begins with a young woman who lived in a small village. She had once known joy, for she was blessed with a child, her only son, the light of her life. But fate turned against her, and one day the boy fell ill. She tried everything she knew. She prayed, she sought remedies, she held him close through the night, but his little body grew weaker until he finally slipped away. For Kisa Gotami, the loss was unbearable. Her arms, once full, were now empty. Her ears, once filled with laughter, were now filled with silence. Her mind could not accept it. She carried her son's body in her arms, refusing to believe he was gone. Desperate, she went from house to house, begging the villagers for medicine that could restore his life. Some pitied her, some turned away, and some told her what she did not want to hear. Death is final, but she refused to accept. Her grief was a storm that drowned every voice of reason. At last someone directed her to the Buddha. They said, "Only he has the wisdom to help you." So she went to him, clutching the body of her child, tears streaming down her face. She fell at his feet and pleaded, "Master, please give me a medicine that will bring my son back to life." The Buddha looked at her with eyes full of compassion. He did not scold her or tell her bluntly that her son could not return. Instead, he said gently, "There is a way. Bring me a single mustard seed from a household that has never known death. With that seed, I will prepare a medicine for your son." Kisa Gotami's heart leapt. At last there was hope. She ran through the village, knocking on doors. Each family listened to her request. Every household had mustard seeds, for they were common in every kitchen. But when she asked if death had ever touched their family, the answer was always the same. One family had lost a father, another had lost a daughter, another had lost grandparents. Every home had its story of loss. The sun began to set, and Kisa Gotami was still empty-handed. With each house she visited, the truth sank deeper into her heart. Her suffering was not hers alone. Death had touched every life, every family, every village. She was not cursed by fate nor singled out by cruelty. She was part of the human condition, and her grief was shared by all. Exhausted, she returned to the Buddha. This time she did not carry her child. She had laid him to rest. She bowed before the teacher and said, "I could not find a single house without death. All have lost someone they love." The Buddha nodded softly and replied, "You have now discovered the truth. Death comes to all living beings. No one is spared. The wise understand this and learn to live with compassion, not despair." From that moment, Kisa Gotami entered the path of practice. Her suffering did not vanish, but it was transformed. Grief that had isolated her now connected her to others. Her heart opened, and in her loss, she found compassion for all who grieve. This story continues to echo across centuries because it speaks directly to the core of human experience. Every culture, every generation, every family knows loss. No matter how much wealth we gather, or how carefully we protect those we love, mortality is universal. The mustard seed is a symbol of that truth. It reminds us that death is not a punishment, not a failure, but part of the cycle of life. For many people today, grief still feels like exile. When someone dies, the mourner feels singled out, as if the universe has betrayed them. Friends may offer condolences, but the pain seems unbearable. The story of the mustard seed teaches that grief does not isolate us. It unites us. We walk in a long line of mourners stretching back through history. To remember this is to feel less alone. Modern psychology has confirmed what the Buddha taught. Grief, when acknowledged and shared, becomes more bearable. Support groups, rituals of mourning, and conversations about loss all help us heal. The worst pain is not death itself, but the belief that our grief is unique, that no one else can understand. The Buddha knew that Kisa Gotami did not need abstract philosophy. She needed to see with her own eyes that loss is universal. By sending her to gather mustard seeds, he gave her a journey that opened her heart to reality. The teaching of impermanence is woven into this story. Everything we hold dear will eventually pass. Relationships, possessions, even our own bodies are subject to change. This truth can feel harsh, but it is also liberating. If we accept impermanence, we can love more deeply while we have the chance. Knowing that a flower will wilt makes its bloom even more precious. Knowing that life is fragile makes each moment sacred. To resist impermanence is to invite endless suffering. We cling, we demand permanence, we fight against change, but in the end, change always wins. The Buddha invites us not to fight, but to flow. Like the monk tasting the strawberry between the tigers, we are called to taste the sweetness of life, while it is here without expecting it to last forever. The mustard seed also speaks to compassion. When we realize that everyone carries grief, we soften toward others. That stranger on the street, that colleague at work, that neighbor next door, all have lost someone. Beneath the surface of ordinary life, there is a river of sorrow. When we remember this, we are less quick to judge, less harsh with our words, more willing to extend kindness. Compassion grows from shared suffering. In your own life, think of the people you have lost. Their absence may still ache. That ache is the first arrow of pain. But notice if you add the second arrow, why me, why now, why did I have to lose them? Those questions deepen suffering without bringing answers. The mustard seed teaches us to replace those questions with a different one. How can I honor their memory by living with compassion? Tonight, as you sit quietly, reflect on the mustard seeds you might gather. If you went door to door in your own neighborhood, you would hear countless stories of loss. Some would speak of parents, others of children, others of friends taken too soon. Imagine holding all these stories together. Feel the weight, and then feel the connection. You are not alone in grief. None of us are. The Buddha once said, "Just as a mother would protect her only child with her life, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings." Kisa Gotami's love for her son was boundless, and through her loss she learned to extend that love to all. That is the true medicine, not a seed to bring back the dead, but a seed of compassion that brings the living together. The story ends not with despair but with transformation. Kisa Gotami became a devoted follower of the Buddha, her grief reshaped into wisdom. Her suffering did not disappear, but it became fuel for understanding. She discovered that impermanence does not rob life of meaning, it gives life its urgency and depth. So when death visits your home, remember the mustard seed. Remember that every house has known loss. Let that truth break the illusion of isolation. Allow it to open your heart. And as you walk through your own grief, let compassion be the medicine you offer to others, for in giving it you also receive healing yourself. After the lesson of the mustard seed, which revealed the universal nature of grief and impermanence, we turn to another story that teaches us how to meet life's uncertainties with calmness. This is the parable of the farmer and the horse. Long ago, in a quiet village surrounded by mountains and fields, there lived a poor farmer. His only wealth was a single horse. This horse helped him plow his fields, carry heavy loads, and provide a measure of dignity in the eyes of his neighbors. One day, the horse ran away into the hills. The villagers came to console him. They shook their heads and said, "What bad luck! Without your horse, how will you work your fields? How will you survive?" The farmer listened but did not join in their despair. He simply replied, "Maybe so, maybe not." A week later, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned, but it did not come back alone. Following it were several wild horses from the hills. The farmer suddenly had many horses. The villagers exclaimed, "How wonderful! What good fortune! Now you are rich." Again the farmer answered, "Maybe so, maybe not." Soon after, the farmer's only son tried to tame one of the wild horses. The animal threw him off and the young man broke his leg. The neighbors gasped, "What terrible misfortune! Your son is injured. He cannot help you with the harvest. Truly, this is a disaster." The farmer looked at them calmly and said once more, "Maybe so, maybe not." Not long after, soldiers rode into the village, demanding that every young man join the army to fight in a distant war. The farmer's son with his broken leg was left behind. The villagers now saw the situation differently. "How fortunate that your son was injured. He has been spared from war, while our sons may never return." And again the farmer responded, "Maybe so, maybe not." The story ends there unfinished, because the truth of life is that events are never fully good or bad. They change meaning as circumstances change. What seems like tragedy today may reveal itself as blessing tomorrow. What seems like fortune may carry hidden trials. The wisdom of the farmer is his refusal to cling to quick judgments. He meets each event with equanimity, with the patience to wait and see. This parable teaches a vital lesson about how we interpret our lives. Most of us are quick to label experiences. We say, "This is a disaster," or "This is the best thing that ever happened to me." But often, we are wrong. The mind loves certainty, but life is far more complex. Events ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. To insist on labeling them too soon is to blind ourselves to deeper possibilities. In modern times, we can see countless examples of this truth. Someone loses a job and feels crushed, believing their future is ruined. Yet a year later, they discover a new path that brings them more joy and meaning than the old one ever could. Another person is rejected in love and feels their world collapsing, but later they meet someone with whom they can build a truer, healthier bond. What first appears as failure or misfortune often becomes the doorway to unexpected growth. The teaching is not that we should deny pain. When the son broke his leg, it hurt. When the horse ran away, it left the farmer without help. These were real difficulties. But instead of despairing or celebrating, the farmer chose patience. He knew that life unfolds like a long river, and each twist may reveal something new. By refusing to cling to a fixed label, he remained free from the highs of false hope and the lows of despair. This quality is called equanimity in Buddhist practice. It is the calm balance of mind that does not collapse in hardship nor inflate in triumph. Equanimity is not indifference. It is not cold detachment. It is a steady heart that feels deeply but does not drown in extremes. The farmer still cared for his son, still valued his horse, but he did not allow events to rule his peace. How do we cultivate this quality in our own lives? The first step is awareness. Notice how quickly the mind leaps to conclusions. You miss a train and immediately think, "This ruins my day." But perhaps missing that train allows you to meet someone on the next one who changes your life. You receive criticism and think, "This is terrible." But perhaps that feedback becomes the seed of your greatest growth. By pausing before labeling events, you open the door to curiosity. The second step is perspective. Equanimity grows when we remember that life is long and unpredictable. What seems final is rarely final. Each moment is part of a larger story. If you imagine your life as a book, one bad chapter does not define the whole. The farmer knew this instinctively. He allowed the story to continue without rushing to judgment. The third step is practice. Equanimity is strengthened through mindfulness and meditation. When we sit quietly and observe the mind, we see how thoughts and emotions rise and fall. Joy, sorrow, fear, hope, they come and go like clouds in the sky. In watching this impermanence, we realize we do not need to cling. We can let experiences flow without being swept away. The story of the farmer and the horse also connects to resilience. Modern psychology shows that people who are resilient often reinterpret their experiences in a positive light. They do not deny pain, but they remain open to the possibility that difficulty may lead to growth. This is exactly what the farmer models. His phrase, "maybe so, maybe not," is a refusal to close the door on possibility. It is resilience expressed in simplicity. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Can you recall a time when you judged something as a disaster only to discover later that it was a hidden blessing? Or a time when you celebrated a success only to realize it brought challenges you did not expect? These memories reveal the truth of the parable. Life is too vast for quick judgments. Wisdom lies in humility, in admitting that we do not always know. As you listen to this teaching tonight, imagine carrying the calm patience of the farmer into your daily life. The next time something goes wrong, instead of collapsing into despair, try saying, "Maybe so, maybe not." Let the story unfold. The next time something goes right, instead of clinging to it with desperate joy, try the same phrase. Hold it lightly. Allow life to reveal its deeper patterns. The Buddha taught that peace does not come from controlling events, but from controlling our reactions to them. We cannot stop horses from running away or prevent accidents or wars. But we can choose how to meet these changes. We can meet them with panic, or we can meet them with calm curiosity. The farmer shows us the path of calm curiosity. The villagers, in their eagerness to label events, swung between despair and celebration. Their peace depended on circumstances, and so it rose and fell like a fragile house built on sand. The farmer's peace came from within. It was built on equanimity, and so it remained steady through both loss and gain. Tonight, as you reflect on this story, ask yourself, how often do I fire quick judgments about my life? How often do I say, this is terrible or this is perfect, before the story has even unfolded? Can I learn to wait, to breathe, to trust that life may carry hidden possibilities? I cannot yet see the parable of the farmer and the horse does not promise that life will always turn out in our favor. It promises something deeper, that if we meet life with equanimity, we will not be destroyed by its changes. We will ride the waves with steadiness, tasting peace even in uncertainty. That is the true fortune, greater than horses, greater than wealth, the fortune of a balanced heart. The wisdom of the farmer and his horse teaches us equanimity, the art of not rushing to label events as good or bad. From there, the next lesson unfolds through another story from the time of the Buddha, one that shows how we can respond to anger without being consumed by it. One day, as the Buddha walked quietly through a village with his disciples, people gathered along the road to see him. Many bowed in respect, eager to hear his words, but not everyone welcomed his presence. Among the crowd was a man whose heart was full of bitterness. He resented the Buddha's growing influence. Perhaps he felt threatened, perhaps envious, or perhaps his own inner struggles made him lash out. Whatever the reason, he stepped forward with rage burning in his eyes. He shouted insults at the Buddha, mocking his teachings, calling him a fraud. His words were sharp, like knives meant to wound. The crowd grew tense. The disciples clenched their fists in anger, ready to defend their master. But the Buddha stood still, his face calm, his posture unmoved. When the man finally paused for breath, the Buddha spoke with quiet strength. If someone offers you a gift, he said, and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man, confused, replied, it remains with the one who offered it. The Buddha looked at him gently and said, so it is with your anger. You offer it to me, but I do not accept it. It remains with you. The man was struck silent. His fury had met no resistance, no retaliation. Instead, it had been returned to him without harm. Some say he walked away ashamed. Others say he later returned to apologize and even became a follower. But the essence of the story remains clear. Anger is a gift we do not have to accept. This teaching is as practical today as it was centuries ago. We live in a world full of anger. Drivers shout on the road, colleagues snap in frustration, strangers unleash hostility online. In these moments, our instinct is to defend ourselves, to strike back. Yet when we do, we only fuel the fire. Anger meets anger, and the flames grow. But if we, like the Buddha, refuse the gift, the fire has nothing to consume. This does not mean we must remain passive or accept injustice. It means we choose not to let anger poison our hearts. We can act firmly, even forcefully, without hatred. We can set boundaries, speak truth, and pursue justice with clarity rather than rage. Anger clouds the mind, but calmness sharpens it. The Buddha's refusal to accept the gift of anger was not weakness. It was strength of the deepest kind. Think of a time when someone insulted you. Perhaps it was a stranger, perhaps a loved one. Did their words burn in your chest long after they were spoken? That is the power of accepting the gift. We carry the insult with us, replaying it again and again, letting it poison our peace. But if we let the words remain with the speaker, they lose their sting. We recognize that anger often reveals more about the one who carries it than the one at whom it is directed. Modern psychology echoes this truth. Therapists often remind us that anger is a secondary emotion, usually hiding fear, pain, or insecurity. When someone lashes out, it is often because they are wounded themselves. To refuse the gift of anger is to recognize this hidden pain and to choose compassion over retaliation. This does not mean allowing others to walk over us. It means standing in our own dignity without being dragged into the mud. The Buddha did not argue, did not return insult for insult. He simply exposed the futility of anger by refusing to participate in it. His calmness revealed the man's fury as empty, powerless, without a receiver. How can we practice this in our own lives? The first step is awareness. Notice the surge of heat in your body when anger comes toward you. Your jaw tightens, your breath quickens, your thoughts race with replies. In that moment, pause. Remember the Buddha's words, I do not accept it. Let the anger remain with its owner. Breathe once before you respond. The second step is compassion. Ask yourself what suffering lies behind this anger. Often the person shouting is not truly angry at you. They may be angry at their own failures, their own disappointments, their own wounds. Seeing this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it softens your heart. Instead of reacting with equal hostility, you can respond with steadiness. The third step is choice. You can decide whether to engage or to walk away. Some anger deserves no answer. Silence can be more powerful than words. Other times, a calm response can transform the situation. By refusing the gift, you model another way of being. You show that peace is stronger than rage. Consider the workplace. A colleague criticizes you harshly in a meeting. The first instinct is to fight back. But if you pause and say, "I hear your concern. Let's explore it calmly," you shift the energy. The attack loses power because you did not accept the gift. Or consider family life. A loved one lashes out in stress. Instead of shouting back, you breathe and say, "I see that you're upset. Let's talk when we're calmer." In this way, you protect both yourself and the relationship. The teaching also applies inwardly. How often do we offer anger to ourselves? We make a mistake and shout inside, "I am useless. I always fail." We insult ourselves in ways harsher than anyone else would dare. These words too are gifts, and here we can choose not to accept them. We can say, "I made a mistake, but I am learning. I do not need to accept cruelty from myself." To practice self-compassion is to refuse the gift of inner anger. The Buddha's lesson does not promise that others will stop being angry. People will continue to lash out, but it promises that we can remain free. We can choose not to be wounded by every arrow of insult. We can let the anger pass through us without leaving a scar. This is freedom, not freedom from conflict, but freedom from the chains of reaction. Tonight, as you reflect, recall a recent moment when someone offered you the gift of anger. Did you accept it? Did you carry it home, replay it in your mind, let it disturb your sleep? Or did you let it remain with them as the Buddha taught? What would change in your life if you chose again and again not to accept such gifts? The story of the Buddha and the angry man teaches that peace is not weakness. It is the greatest power. Anyone can shout, anyone can strike, but it takes true strength to remain calm in the face of insult. To walk through a world full of anger and not be ruled by it is to live with freedom. That is the gift the Buddha offers us, the ability to let anger fall away, leaving us steady, clear, and unshaken. The lesson of the angry man shows us that peace can be preserved by refusing to accept the gift of rage. From there, another Zen story leads us deeper into the understanding of impermanence and the art of appreciation. It is the story of the broken cup. There was once a monk who lived simply owning very few possessions. Among his belongings was a small cup, plain in design, but one he used each day for water and tea. To others it looked ordinary, but for him the cup held significance because it accompanied his daily practice. When visitors admired it, the monk would smile and say, "This cup is already broken." The visitors were puzzled. They would look at the cup whole and uncracked and wonder what he meant. One day, a student finally asked him to explain. The monk held the cup gently in his hands and said, "For me, this cup is already broken. I know that one day it will fall, or someone will drop it, or time will wear it down. When I accept that it is already broken, then every moment I drink from it is precious. I enjoy it fully without fear of losing it. And when it finally breaks, I will not suffer because in my heart it was broken long ago." The wisdom of the broken cup is a profound expression of impermanence. Everything we love, everything we hold will one day pass away. Our bodies will age, our possessions will decay, our relationships will change, and eventually we will say goodbye to all of it. This truth can feel heavy, but when we accept it, we discover a paradox. Instead of making life bleak, the awareness of impermanence makes each moment brighter. Just as the monk valued his cup more because he knew it would one day be gone, we can value our lives more deeply when we remember that nothing lasts forever. Consider how most people live. We take things for granted until they are gone. We rush through meals without savoring the taste. We speak to loved ones without truly listening, assuming they will always be there. We treat our health casually, assuming it will remain strong. And then, when change arrives, we are shocked, grieving, and unprepared. The broken cup teaches us to live differently. It urges us to appreciate now, not later. It tells us to see every moment as fragile and therefore precious. This teaching is closely connected to the Japanese art of kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of hiding cracks, the repair highlights them, making the object more beautiful because of its history. Life itself is like this. The cracks of loss, aging, and imperfection are not flaws to be hidden, but reminders of beauty and fragility. A repaired cup becomes more meaningful than a flawless one. A life marked by change becomes richer than one lived in denial. Modern psychology calls this perspective gratitude. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, we feel more content. Gratitude does not ignore impermanence. It embraces it. It says, "Because this will not last, I am grateful for it now." Studies show that people who regularly practice gratitude report greater happiness and less anxiety. The monk with his broken cup was living gratitude each day. Think of the people closest to you. Imagine just for a moment that you will not always have them. This thought may sting, but it also sharpens your awareness. Their voice, their smile, their presence, these are not ordinary. They are extraordinary because they will not last forever. To hold them in your heart as already fragile is not to despair, but to cherish them more. The broken cup also teaches us how to face loss with wisdom. When the cup finally shatters, the monk does not collapse into despair. He simply acknowledges, "Yes, it is broken as I knew it would be." This does not mean he feels nothing. It means his heart is prepared. He has already made peace with impermanence. In our own lives, when loss comes, and it always does, we can remember this teaching. The grief will still come, but it will not destroy us. We will see it as part of the natural flow of life. How can we practice this teaching daily? One method is mindful appreciation. Choose one object or relationship you value. Say to yourself quietly, "This is already broken." Then hold it, use it, or be with it as though it were your last time. Notice how much more vivid and precious it becomes. The food tastes richer, the conversation feels deeper, the moment shines brighter. Another practice is reflection. At the end of each day, recall 3 things you are grateful for: a warm meal, a kind word, the sight of the evening sky. Remember that none of these are guaranteed tomorrow. Let this awareness soften your heart. Gratitude is not about clinging. It is about letting go with love. The broken cup also teaches humility. We often believe we can control life, hold on to things, prevent change. But the truth is that control is limited. No matter how tightly we grip, cups still break, people still leave, time still flows. By surrendering this illusion of control, we find freedom. We stop wasting energy resisting reality and start using that energy to live fully. Think of moments in your own life when something broke, perhaps a relationship ended, or a possession was lost, or a stage of life passed away. At first, the loss may have felt unbearable, but later perhaps you discovered that life continued, that new beauty emerged. Like the cup prepared with gold, your life gained depth through its cracks. Tonight, as you reflect, hold the image of the broken cup in your mind. Imagine the objects you treasure, the people you love, the experiences you enjoy. Whisper to yourself, "They are already broken." Feel the sadness, but also feel the gratitude that comes with this recognition. Let it inspire you to live with more tenderness, more appreciation, more love. The Buddha once taught, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. To see that every cup is already broken is to see with wisdom. It is not to reject life, but to embrace it fully, knowing its fragility. The story of the broken cup reminds us that peace comes not from denial of impermanence, but from acceptance of it. When we accept that everything is already broken, every sip of tea becomes a celebration, every embrace becomes a gift, every breath becomes sacred. Life becomes more vivid, not despite impermanence, but because of it. So let us drink deeply from our cups tonight, knowing they are already broken, and in that knowledge find joy that no change can take away. The broken cup teaches us how to embrace impermanence and cherish what we hold while we still have it. From there, another Zen parable shows us how much suffering we create simply by refusing to let go. It is the story of the 2 monks and the river. Long ago, 2 monks were traveling together on foot, moving from one monastery to another. They had taken vows of simplicity and discipline, dedicating their lives to practice and to mindfulness. The older monk was seasoned and steady, calm in his movements and speech. The younger monk was eager, but often troubled by the strict rules of their order. One such rule forbade them from touching women to preserve their vows of celibacy and detachment. On their journey, they came upon a river swollen from recent rains. The water rushed quickly, muddy and strong. Standing on the bank was a young woman dressed in fine clothes, clearly unable to cross without ruining her garments or being swept away. She looked distressed, glancing at the water and then at the empty path beyond. Without hesitation, the older monk approached her. He bowed slightly and said, "Allow me." He lifted her gently into his arms and carried her across the river, stepping carefully on the stones until they reached the other side. He set her down, bowed again, and continued walking. The woman thanked him and went her way. The younger monk followed, silent at first, but his mind burned with judgment. Hours passed as they walked together through forests and fields. The older monk moved peacefully while the younger grew increasingly agitated. Finally, unable to contain himself, the younger monk burst out. "How could you do that? You know our vows forbid us from touching women. You carried her in your arms. You broke the rule." The older monk looked at him with calm eyes and replied, "Brother, I put her down hours ago at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" This story has traveled across centuries because it captures one of the deepest truths of the human mind. We carry burdens long after the moment has passed. The older monk's compassion guided his action. He responded to the situation with wisdom and then let it go. The younger monk carried not the woman but his anger, his judgment, and his attachment to the rule. In doing so, he created suffering where none was necessary. How often do we behave like the younger monk? Someone offends us in the morning and we replay the words all day. A mistake we made years ago still whispers shame in our ears. A disappointment from the past returns again and again, stealing the joy of the present moment. We carry people and events long after they are gone. The river has long been crossed, but in our minds we still clutch the weight. Zen practice invites us to put down what we carry unnecessarily. The past cannot be changed, yet we relive it endlessly. Each time we replay an insult, we suffer again. Each time we revisit regret, we reopen old wounds. This is like carrying the woman across the river all day. The action is long finished, but the burden remains in the mind. The teaching of the two monks also reveals the importance of intention. The older monk acted out of compassion, not desire. His action broke no true vow, because the spirit of the vow was to prevent attachment, not to block kindness. By responding to the woman's need, and then releasing the moment, he stayed free. The younger monk, clinging to judgment, was the one truly entangled. In life, what matters is often not the rigid rule, but the intention of the heart. Modern psychology calls this tendency, rumination, the habit of dwelling on past events. Studies show that rumination increases anxiety and depression. When the mind loops endlessly on what has already happened, we become prisoners of memory. The cure is mindfulness, the practice of noticing when we are replaying the past and choosing to return to the present. Each time we catch ourselves carrying an old burden, we can ask, why am I still holding this? Can I set it down? This story also teaches us about forgiveness. To forgive does not mean to excuse harmful behavior. It means to release our grip on resentment so it no longer poisons us. The woman at the river did nothing wrong, yet the younger monk could not forgive the image of what he thought was a broken rule. He punished himself by carrying that resentment. How often do we do the same? We cling to anger at someone who hurt us long ago, even when they are no longer in our lives. Forgiveness is the act of putting them down, not for their sake, but for ours. The two monks remind us that life constantly presents rivers to cross. Some are swift and dangerous, requiring courage. Others are shallow, requiring only patience. Each time we cross, we face a choice. Will we carry the burden with us, or will we set it down once the moment has passed? Imagine how your life would change if you practiced like the older monk. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you put it down immediately. A colleague criticizes you unfairly and you release it after addressing the situation. A friend forgets to call and instead of carrying hurt all week, you let it go. Each release lightens your steps, just as the older monk walked calmly through the fields. The Buddha once said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The younger monk grasped that coal all day. The older monk let it go before it ever burned his hand. This is the choice available to each of us. Tonight, as you reflect, ask yourself, what burdens am I still carrying from the past? Whose words, whose actions, whose mistakes still weigh on my heart? Imagine setting them down at the riverbank. Imagine walking forward without them, lighter, freer. This is the practice of release. The story of the two monks and the river reminds us that suffering is not only in what happens but in what we hold on to. Compassion guided by wisdom allows us to act skillfully and then let go. Judgment and clinging bind us long after the moment has passed. We do not need to carry what has already been set down. So the next time life presents you with a river to cross, remember the monks. Act with compassion, release with awareness, and continue your journey unburdened. In doing so, you will discover that freedom is not found in changing the past, but in letting go of it. The story of the two monks and the river reminds us of the weight we carry unnecessarily when we cling to the past. From there, another story offers a lesson about the dangers of clinging to certainty and pride. It is known as the parable of the cup too full. There was once a learned professor who traveled to visit a Zen master. The professor had studied philosophy, science, and religion for many years. He had taught at universities, written books, and carried with him a reputation for wisdom. Yet despite all his knowledge, he had heard that Zen contained a teaching unlike anything he had studied before. Curious but also skeptical, he wanted to see if the master had anything to offer him. When he arrived, the master welcomed him politely and invited him to sit. The professor began speaking at once, eager to demonstrate his knowledge. He recited theories, quoted scriptures, and compared Zen to philosophies he already understood. He asked questions, but before the master could reply, he supplied his own answers. His words poured out endlessly like water from a rushing stream. The master listened quietly. Then, as the professor continued, the master picked up a teapot and began pouring tea into the professor's cup. The tea rose to the brim and then began to spill over, dripping onto the table and the floor. Still, the master poured calmly and deliberately. The professor leapt up in alarm. "Stop, the cup is full. No more will go in." The master looked at him with calm eyes and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and knowledge. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The professor fell silent. In that single moment, the lesson became clear. To learn something new, he would need to release what he already believed he knew. This parable strikes at the heart of one of the greatest obstacles to growth: pride in our own knowledge. The professor represents all of us when we cling too tightly to our beliefs and opinions. The mind becomes so full that no space remains for new understanding. We live in a world that rewards expertise and certainty, yet the wisdom of Zen asks us to approach life with what is called beginner's mind, the openness of a student who knows nothing and is ready for anything. Consider how often in daily life we resist emptying our cup. A friend offers advice, and we interrupt with our own view. A colleague suggests a new approach, and we dismiss it because it does not match our habits. Even in moments of silence, our minds chatter with judgments and assumptions. With a cup so full, no fresh wisdom can enter. The practice of Zen invites us to notice this fullness and gently set it down. Beginner's mind does not mean ignorance. It means humility, the willingness to see each moment as new. Imagine looking at a tree not as a biologist categorizing species, not as a poet layering metaphors, but simply as a living presence before you. Imagine listening to a child not with adult impatience, but with curiosity about their world. Beginner's mind is not empty in the sense of void. It is empty like fertile soil ready to receive. Modern psychology speaks of the same principle in the concept of cognitive flexibility. People who can adapt their thinking, who can shift perspectives, are better able to solve problems and handle change. A rigid mind like a cup too full blocks growth. A flexible mind like an empty cup welcomes new possibilities. This flexibility is not weakness but strength. The danger of a cup too full extends beyond individuals. Entire societies can become trapped by their assumptions. History is filled with examples of cultures so convinced of their superiority that they refuse to learn from others only to fall into decline. Companies that cling to old ways collapse when innovation passes them by. Families that hold on to rigid traditions may suffocate the very love they hope to preserve. In each case, the cup overflows and nothing new can enter. How then can we practice emptying our cup? The first step is silence. In conversation, instead of rushing to speak, we pause and truly listen. We allow the words of others to enter us without immediately judging them. Listening with openness is one of the most profound ways to practice humility. The second step is curiosity. Rather than assuming we know, we ask questions. Not questions meant to trap or display our cleverness, but genuine questions that open doors. Curiosity says, "Teach me, show me, let me see what I have missed." This spirit dissolves pride and invites discovery. The third step is letting go. We all carry stories about who we are and what we know. To empty the cup is to loosen our grip on these stories. We can say, "Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps there is another way." This does not erase our knowledge, but makes it flexible, alive, and responsive. Imagine how relationships might change if we practiced emptying our cups. Arguments often escalate because each side insists their view is correct. But if even one person pauses and listens, space opens for understanding. The overflowing tea stops spilling, and both can sip from a freshly poured cup. In the workplace, leaders who approach with beginner's mind create teams that innovate and thrive. In families, parents who listen to their children without assuming superiority nurture trust and connection. The parable also applies inwardly. Sometimes our cup is not full of knowledge but of self-criticism. We fill it with thoughts like "I am not good enough," "I always fail," "I can never change." These beliefs leave no room for growth. To empty the cup here means to let go of these harsh judgments and allow compassion to flow in. With a mind open to kindness, new possibilities arise. The Buddha once taught, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." This is not to dismiss expertise, but to remind us that true wisdom lies in openness. The world is vast, and our knowledge, no matter how great, is always incomplete. The more we cling to certainty, the less we see. The more we open to not knowing, the more we discover. Tonight, as you reflect, ask yourself what fills your cup. Is it pride in your knowledge, resentment from the past, judgments of others, or self-criticism? Imagine pouring it out, letting the liquid spill away until the cup is empty. Then imagine the master pouring fresh tea, clear and hot, into the open space. This is the practice of humility, the practice of beginning again. The story of the cup too full is not simply about a professor and a Zen master. It is about all of us every day. It is about the moments when our minds overflow with certainty and the invitation to set that certainty aside. To empty the cup is to make space for wisdom, compassion, and growth. It is to drink life freshly, sip by sip, as though for the very first time. The lesson of the cup too full reminds us to empty ourselves of pride and certainty, so that wisdom may enter. From there, Zen tradition offers another story, one that challenges our assumptions about where true insight can be found. It is the parable of the circle drawn in the mud. The story tells of a young monk who traveled a long distance to meet a revered master. He had heard of the master's clarity and hoped to receive a teaching that would illuminate his path. The journey was difficult, and when he finally arrived, his robes were covered in dust, his sandals worn thin. Bowing before the master, the young monk said with humility, "Please, master, give me the essence of Zen, the secret of awakening. I have studied the sutras, memorized the precepts, and practiced discipline, but still I long for understanding. Show me the truth." The master did not reply with words. Instead, he bent down, placed his finger in the wet earth, and drew a simple circle in the mud. He then looked at the young monk and said nothing. The silence stretched on, filled only by the sound of wind rustling the trees. The young monk stared at the circle, confused and restless. Was this a riddle? Was the circle meant to symbolize emptiness, unity, or infinity? He searched his mind for interpretations from the texts he had studied. Each explanation seemed clever, but none satisfied. Finally, overwhelmed by frustration, he blurted out, "What does it mean?" The master smiled gently and replied, "If you cannot see, no words will help you. If you can see, no words are needed." The young monk fell silent. In that moment, he realized that the circle was not a puzzle to be solved, but a mirror of his own mind. His endless search for explanations had blinded him to the truth that wisdom is not always in words, doctrines, or books. Sometimes truth appears in the simplest gesture, a circle drawn in the mud. This story teaches that awakening is not always hidden in temples or scriptures. It can arise in the ordinary, in the dust and mud of daily life. The master drew not on parchment or with fine ink, but in the earth beneath his feet. He showed that enlightenment is not a distant treasure, but something already present, waiting to be seen with fresh eyes. Many of us live as the young monk did, constantly searching for meaning in complicated places. We believe that wisdom is far away, reserved for scholars locked in libraries or hidden in secret rituals. Yet the circle in the mud reminds us that truth is accessible in the most ordinary moments, if we are willing to be still and see. A breath, a step, a smile, the sound of rain, each can reveal the essence of life. The parable also warns against overthinking. The young monk's mind was full of theories, interpretations, and questions. Like the professor with the overflowing cup, he could not receive the teaching because he was too busy trying to explain it. The master's silence revealed that awakening is not an intellectual exercise. It is a direct experience. You do not explain the taste of water, you drink it. You do not analyze the warmth of the sun, you feel it. Modern life often encourages us to seek answers in endless information. We scroll through articles, consume books, attend lectures, and chase after knowledge. There is value in learning, but without stillness it becomes noise. The circle in the mud calls us back to simplicity. It invites us to stop chasing explanations and simply look. The truth may already be at our feet. Psychologists speak of mindfulness as paying attention to the present moment without judgment. This practice is not about solving problems, but about experiencing life directly. When we walk, we simply walk. When we breathe, we simply breathe. In these moments, the circle in the mud reveals itself. We realize that peace and clarity are not hidden in distant theories, but in the immediacy of life itself. The story also highlights the importance of humility. The young monk arrived thinking he needed a profound secret, but the master's teaching showed that the secret was already within him. In chasing after something special, he missed the ordinary truth. This happens to us as well. We search for meaning in extraordinary achievements or dramatic events, while overlooking the simple beauty of being alive. The circle teaches that nothing is more sacred than the present moment, however plain it may seem. How can we bring this teaching into our lives? One way is through mindful observation. Choose something ordinary, a leaf, a stone, a cup of water. Instead of analyzing or judging, simply look. Notice its shape, texture, and presence. Let it be what it island. In doing so, you may glimpse the circle in the mud, the ordinary, revealing the extraordinary. Another practice is silence. The master's silence was as important as the circle he drew. In silence, the mind's chatter slows, and space opens for awareness. By spending time each day in quiet reflection without distraction, we train ourselves to see more clearly. We begin to notice that the truth is not hidden, but overlooked. The circle in the mud also teaches resilience. Mud is not clean or elegant. It is messy, ordinary, and often dismissed. Yet from mud, the master drew a symbol of awakening. This shows that wisdom can emerge from our own messiness, our struggles and imperfections. We do not need perfect conditions to awaken. We only need to see clearly what is already before us. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Where are you searching for meaning? Are you waiting for a perfect teacher, a special moment, or a grand achievement? What if the lesson is already here in your breath, in the sound of your own heart beating, in the touch of the ground beneath your feet? The circle in the mud invites you to stop seeking elsewhere and look deeply into what is present. The Buddha once said, "The truth is not outside you. Look within. Everything you need is already here." The master's circle embodied this teaching. He offered nothing extraordinary, only mud shaped into a circle. Yet for those who could see it, was enough. Tonight, as you sit quietly, imagine the master drawing a circle in front of you. Do not rush to explain it. Do not seek a hidden meaning. Simply look. Allow the circle to reflect the completeness of this moment. Let it remind you that awakening is not something to achieve, but something to notice. The story of the circle in the mud reminds us that wisdom is not hidden in distant places or lofty words. It is found in the ordinary, in the messy, in the silent. To see it, we must empty our minds of endless explanations and open our hearts to direct experience. Then even the mud beneath our feet can become a mirror of awakening. The stories we have walked through, the empty boat, the monk and the strawberry, the two arrows, the mustard seed, the farmer and his horse, the Buddha and the angry man, the broken cup, the two monks and the river, the cup too full and the circle in the mud may appear at first to be separate parables, each carrying its own lesson. Yet when we step back and look at them together, we see that they form a single river of wisdom flowing toward the same ocean of understanding. Each story is a bend in the river, offering us a different perspective, yet all guiding us toward the practice of mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance. The empty boat teaches us to release anger by recognizing that much of what we suffer is imagined. The monk and the strawberry teaches us to savor the sweetness of the present moment even when danger looms. The two arrows remind us that while pain is unavoidable, suffering is often self-inflicted. The mustard seed shows us that grief is not unique to us, but shared by all. And in that recognition lies compassion. The farmer and his horse urges us to hold life lightly without rushing to call events good or bad. The Buddha and the angry man reveals the power of refusing the gift of hostility, allowing us to remain free. The broken cup whispers that impermanence is not tragedy, but a call to appreciate life as its island. The two monks and the river remind us to put down old burdens instead of carrying them endlessly. The cup too full humbles us, showing that openness is the doorway to growth. Finally, the circle in the mud demonstrates that truth is not distant but present in the ordinary, if only we have the eyes to see. When woven together, these teachings form a tapestry that points to a single truth. Peace is not found in controlling the world, but in transforming the way we meet it. We cannot prevent boats from colliding, tigers from appearing, arrows from striking, or loved ones from dying. We cannot stop horses from running away, people from shouting, cups from breaking, rivers from overflowing, or the mind from filling with questions. Life will continue to present challenges, losses, and uncertainties. But within these very conditions lies the opportunity for awakening. The stories show us again and again that freedom does not come from changing what happens, but from changing how we respond. Mindfulness is the thread that ties all these lessons together. To be mindful is to see clearly without being carried away. When we are mindful, we notice the boat approaching without assuming insult. We taste the strawberry without being consumed by fear of tomorrow. We feel the sting of the first arrow without shooting the second. We hold the mustard seed and realize we are not alone in grief. We watch the horse run away without calling it curse or blessing. We listen to anger without accepting its poison. We drink from the cup knowing it is already broken, and so we drink with gratitude. We set the woman down at the riverbank and walk forward free of resentment. We empty our cup so new tea can be poured. We gaze at the circle in the mud and let silence teach us what words cannot. Each parable is a doorway into mindfulness. Each one is an invitation to live with clarity and compassion. Together they remind us that every moment, no matter how ordinary, can be the ground of practice. We do not need to wait for perfect silence, a mountain retreat, or a sacred temple. The temple is here in the very conditions of our daily lives. The sacred text is written not only in sutras, but in the unfolding of our experiences. The path to peace is not somewhere else. It begins with the step we take right now. These teachings also call us toward compassion, for when we see our own suffering reflected in these stories, we realize that others suffer in the same ways. Everyone has faced their empty boats, their tigers, their arrows, their mustard seeds. Everyone has struggled with loss, judgment, anger, and impermanence. Recognizing this softens the heart. Instead of living in isolation, we live in solidarity. We can look at another person and say, "Your grief is like mine. Your fear is like mine. Your hope is like mine." Compassion grows naturally from this recognition, not as a duty, but as a response of the heart awakened to our shared humanity. To integrate these lessons into daily life requires practice, not perfection. The mind will still grow angry, still cling to the past, still fear the future. Cups will still break, rivers will still overflow, anger will still arrive at our doorstep. But with practice we learn to pause, to breathe, to remember the teachings. The pause is the seed of freedom. In that small space between stimulus and reaction, we can choose differently. Instead of firing the second arrow, we can breathe. Instead of shouting back, we can stay silent. Instead of judging too soon, we can wait. Instead of clutching tightly, we can let go. The stories also remind us that awakening is not something far away. It is already here. The strawberry on the cliffside, the mustard seed in the kitchen, the cup in the hand, the circle in the mud, all are ordinary. The extraordinary lies in our awareness of them. Enlightenment is not escape from the world, but presence within it. It is the ability to taste, to see, to hear, to feel, to be alive without needing life to be different. Tonight, as you hold these stories in your hearts, see them not as separate teachings but as facets of one jewel. Together they shine with the light of mindfulness and compassion. Ask yourself, which story speaks most to my life right now? Which lesson do I most need to remember? Perhaps it is the courage to taste the strawberry despite fear, the humility to empty the cup, the patience to say, maybe so, maybe not, or the gentleness to put down what I have carried too long. Choose one and let it guide you. The river of Zen wisdom flows through these parables, carrying us toward the ocean of peace. We need not rush to the end. Each bend, each teaching, each moment is the path itself. To walk it is already to arrive. The stories are not distant legends. They are mirrors held up to our own lives. In them we see our anger, our grief, our pride, our compassion, our fragility, and our strength. The final message of this body of teachings is simple: live awake. Do not be lost in the past or drowned in the future. Do not carry what has already been set down. Do not cling to what is already broken. Instead, be present, compassionate, open, and free. The wisdom of the Buddha and the Zen masters is not meant to be admired from afar. It is meant to be lived here and now, in every step, every breath, every sip from the cup of life.